Dr. Sarah Chen had seen many strange things during her 15 years working at the Global Space Research Institute, but nothing could have prepared her for what arrived on that cold Tuesday morning in March. The delivery came without warning, transported by a military convoy that stretched half a mile long. Black vehicles with tinted windows surrounded a massive cargo truck, and armed guards stood at every corner of the facility's entrance. She watched from her office window as dozens of soldiers created a perimeter around the loading dock. Her coffee grew cold in her hands as she tried to understand what was happening. The director of the institute, Dr. Marcus Webb, had called an emergency meeting for all senior researchers just an hour earlier, his voice tight with barely contained excitement over the phone. The conference room buzzed with nervous energy when Sarah entered. 20 of the world's top scientists sat around the long table, their faces showing the same confusion she felt. Dr. Webb stood at the head of the room, his hands clasped behind his back, waiting for everyone to settle down. His gray hair looked more disheveled than usual, and there were dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept in days. When the last researcher took their seat, Dr. Webb pressed a button on the remote in his hand. The lights dimmed and a projection appeared on the screen behind him. It showed a desert landscape, rocky and barren with mountains in the distance. Sarah recognized it immediately as the Atacama Desert in Chile, one of the driest places on Earth. Dr. Webb's voice was steady, but carried an underlying tremor of excitement. 3 weeks ago, a mining operation in northern Chile uncovered something extraordinary, buried beneath 300 feet of rock and sand. The miners thought they had struck a new mineral deposit, but when they broke through the final layer of stone, they found something that defied all explanation. The image on the screen changed to show a massive metallic structure, partially excavated from the surrounding rock. It was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. The surface was smooth and dark, almost black, but it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols covered every visible inch, symbols that didn't match any known human language or writing system. The room erupted in whispers and gasps. Sarah leaned forward, her heart pounding. She had spent years studying ancient artifacts and unusual archaeological finds, but this was different. This looked deliberately constructed, precisely engineered, and completely alien. Dr. Webb continued, explaining that every government with advanced technology had sent teams to examine the structure. Carbon dating proved useless because the material didn't contain any organic compounds. Spectral analysis revealed the metal contained elements that shouldn't exist in nature, at least not in the combinations they found. The structure measured approximately 60 feet tall and 40 feet wide, shaped like a massive cube with rounded edges. But the most incredible discovery came when ground-penetrating radar scanned deeper into the site. The structure they had found was just the tip of something much larger. Beneath it lay an entire complex, a network of chambers and corridors that extended down almost half a mile into the Earth's crust. The Chilean government, working with international partners, had managed to create an access point to the first chamber below the surface. That chamber contained what they were calling the vault. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as new images appeared on screen. The vault was a circular room with walls covered in the same mysterious symbols. In the center stood a pedestal, and on that pedestal sat an object that looked like a perfect sphere made of crystalline material. The sphere glowed with a faint blue light that pulsed in a steady rhythm. Every attempt to move the sphere had failed. It seemed to be held in place by some invisible force. Scanning equipment malfunctioned when brought too close. 3 different teams of engineers and scientists had tried to interact with the vault's control mechanisms, but nothing worked. The symbols on the walls appeared to be some kind of interface or lock, but nobody could figure out how to operate it. That's why they were here. Dr. Webb explained that the Institute had been chosen to lead a new international effort to unlock the vault's secrets. They would have access to unlimited resources, the best equipment available, and cooperation from every major scientific organization on the planet. But they needed to work fast because tensions were rising between nations who all wanted control of whatever lay inside. Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and dread. She had always believed humanity wasn't alone in the universe, but she never expected proof to arrive like this. The implications were staggering. If this was truly alien technology, it could revolutionize everything humans understood about physics, engineering, and their place in the cosmos. Dr. Webb dismissed the meeting and told them to prepare for immediate deployment to Chile. They would leave within 48 hours. Sarah returned to her office in a daze, her mind racing with questions. Who built this vault? When did they build it? Why did they bury it so deep beneath the earth? And most importantly, what were they trying to protect or hide inside? She spent the rest of the day reviewing every piece of information available about the discovery. The more she learned, the more questions arose. The symbols covering the vault didn't match any ancient Earth civilization, but they showed patterns suggesting mathematical relationships and logical structure. Whoever created this used a sophisticated system of communication. That night, Sarah barely slept. She kept thinking about the glowing sphere and the sealed chambers below. Somewhere in that complex lay answers to questions humanity had asked for thousands of years. She just had to help find the key to unlock them. 2 days later, she stood in the Atacama Desert, the hot sun beating down on her face as she looked at the excavation site. The reality was even more impressive than the photographs. The metallic structure rose from the sand like a monument to an advanced civilization. Teams of workers and scientists swarmed around it, taking measurements, running tests, and documenting everything. Sarah descended into the underground chamber through a temporary elevator shaft the engineers had constructed. The temperature dropped as she went deeper, and the air took on a strange quality, almost electric. When she reached the bottom, she stepped into the vault room and felt her breath catch once again. The glowing sphere pulsed with its steady blue rhythm, casting dancing shadows on the symbol-covered walls. Sarah approached slowly, feeling drawn to it by something she couldn't explain. She had a strange sensation that this was just the beginning of something that would change everything. Sarah spent the next 3 weeks working alongside 30 other scientists from 12 different countries. The vault had become the most heavily guarded location on Earth, with security checkpoints at every level and surveillance cameras recording everything. Each researcher specialized in different fields, from linguistics and archaeology to quantum physics and advanced mathematics. They all shared the same goal but had completely different approaches to solving the puzzle. The team divided into smaller groups, each focusing on specific aspects of the vault. Sarah joined the linguistics group, working with Dr. Yuki Tanaka from Japan and Professor Ahmed Hassan from Egypt. Their job was to decode the symbols covering the walls and find patterns that might reveal how to operate the locking mechanism. Dr. Tanaka had brought sophisticated pattern recognition, software that could analyze thousands of symbol combinations per second. Professor Hassan contributed his expertise in ancient languages and symbolic communication systems. Sarah focused on the mathematical relationships between symbols, looking for sequences that repeated or changed in predictable ways. The work was exhausting and frustrating. Every time they thought they found a pattern, it would break down when applied to other sections of the wall. The symbols seemed to shift meaning based on their position and context, making traditional translation methods useless. It was like trying to read a book where every word changed definition depending on what page it appeared on. Other teams weren't having better luck. The engineering group tried everything from electromagnetic pulses to acoustic resonance to interact with the sphere, but it remained perfectly still on its pedestal. The physics team discovered the sphere somehow generated its own gravitational field, creating the invisible force that kept it locked in place. But understanding how it worked didn't help them turn it off. Tensions rose as weeks passed without progress. Government representatives visited the site daily, demanding updates and results. Some countries threatened to pull their funding if breakthroughs didn't happen soon. Scientists who had started as colleagues began competing with each other, hoping their team would be the first to crack the code. Sarah found herself staying in the vault long after others left for the night. She would sit in the corner, notebook in hand, just watching the sphere pulse with its blue light. Something about the rhythm felt familiar, almost musical. She started timing the pulses, noting that they followed a specific pattern with slight variations. One night, exhausted from another fruitless day, Sarah sat with her back against the cool metal wall and closed her eyes. The pulsing light created patterns behind her eyelids. She let her mind wander, not trying to solve anything, just existing in the space. That's when she heard it, a faint humming sound that seemed to come from the walls themselves. She opened her eyes and stood up, pressing her palm against the nearest symbol. The metal felt warm under her touch and the humming grew slightly louder. Sarah moved around the room, touching different symbols, noting how the sound changed with each one. Some made the humming increase in pitch, others decreased it. Some caused it to speed up or slow down. Excited, she called Dr. Tanaka and Professor Hassan back to the vault. She showed them what she discovered, and they quickly set up equipment to measure the acoustic properties of the symbols. The data revealed something incredible. Each symbol emitted a unique frequency when touched, and those frequencies combined to create harmonic patterns. The vault wasn't just a lock that needed a key. It was an instrument that needed to be played. The symbols were like musical notes, and the correct combination would create a specific harmonic sequence that matched the sphere's pulsing rhythm. Sarah's discovery energized the entire team and gave them a new direction to explore. They spent the next week mapping every symbol's frequency and testing different combinations. The process was slow because they had to be careful not to trigger any defensive mechanisms the vault might have. Nobody knew what would happen if they played the wrong sequence. It could seal the vault forever or worse. Sarah worked closely with a sound engineer named David Park from South Korea. David had experience with harmonic analysis and helped create computer models of how different symbol combinations might sound. They tested thousands of sequences, looking for patterns that matched the sphere's pulse. During this time, Sarah learned more about her fellow researchers. Dr. Tanaka had a daughter the same age as Sarah's niece back home. Professor Hassan loved terrible jokes and would lighten tense moments with his humor. David was a classical pianist before becoming an engineer, and brought a musician's ear to their work. But not everyone was happy with their progress. Dr. Raymond Foster, who led the physics team, believed they were wasting time with the acoustic approach. He argued they should focus on finding a technological solution, perhaps using the same advanced physics that created the sphere's gravitational field. Arguments broke out during team meetings, with researchers defending their methods and criticizing others. Dr. Webb had to intervene several times to keep the peace. He reminded everyone they were part of something bigger than personal achievements or national pride. Whatever secrets the vault held could benefit all humanity, but only if they worked together. His words helped calm tensions, but the competitive atmosphere remained. Sarah pushed through the doubts and continued her work. She felt in her gut that the acoustic approach was correct. The vault's builders had created something beautiful, not just functional. They had turned a security system into an art form, requiring both knowledge and intuition to unlock. One breakthrough came when Professor Hassan noticed that certain symbol groupings appeared in sequences that matched mathematical constants. The golden ratio pi and other fundamental numbers were encoded in the wall's design. This discovery helped them narrow down which symbols were important and which were decorative. David created a new computer model incorporating these mathematical relationships with the acoustic frequencies. The results showed a possible sequence that matched the sphere's rhythm almost perfectly. They still needed to test it, but everyone felt they were finally getting close to solving the puzzle. However, before they could attempt the sequence, something unexpected happened. A junior researcher named Tom Bradley, working alone late at night, decided to try his own theory. He believed a simple electromagnetic pulse at the right frequency might reset the vault's locking mechanism. Without telling anyone, he brought equipment into the chamber and activated it. The result was immediate and catastrophic. Alarms blared throughout the facility as the sphere's blue light turned red and pulsed rapidly. The vault's walls began to hum with a deep, threatening sound. Security rushed everyone out of the underground chamber while engineers scrambled to assess the damage. Tom's unauthorized experiment had triggered some kind of defensive response. For 3 days, nobody could enter the vault. The red light continued pulsing, and sensors detected energy readings that fluctuated wildly. Dr. Webb was furious with Tom, who faced disciplinary action and possible criminal charges for endangering the entire project. Some researchers wanted to abandon the acoustic approach, arguing it was too dangerous to continue, but Sarah refused to give up. She had come too far and learned too much to walk away now. She convinced Dr. Webb to let her team make one more attempt. If the acoustic sequence matched the sphere's rhythm, it might calm whatever defensive system Tom had activated. It was risky, but they were running out of options and time. On the 4th day after the incident, the red pulsing finally slowed to a rhythm similar to the original blue pulse. Dr. Webb gave Sarah permission to enter the vault with her team, but under strict conditions. They would have only 30 minutes. Security would monitor everything, and at the first sign of danger, they would evacuate immediately. Sarah, Dr. Tanaka, Professor Hassan, and David descended into the chamber wearing protective gear and carrying their acoustic equipment. The atmosphere felt different now, charged with tension and possibility. The sphere still glowed red, though less intensely than before. The symbols on the walls seemed to shimmer in the strange light. They worked quickly to set up their equipment. David connected speakers around the room at specific points to create the best acoustic field. Dr. Tanaka loaded their sequence into the computer while Professor Hassan double-checked the mathematical relationships. Sarah stood near the sphere, watching its pulse, feeling the rhythm in her bones. Everything was ready. David looked at Sarah and nodded. She took a deep breath and gave the signal. The computer began playing the sequence they had discovered, translating the symbol frequencies into actual sound. The vault filled with tones that rose and fell in complex harmonies, creating music unlike anything Sarah had ever heard. At first, nothing happened. The sphere continued its red pulse unchanged. Sarah felt her heart sink, wondering if they had made a terrible mistake. But then slowly the red light began to fade. Blue returned, mixing with the red to create purple, then gradually shifting back to the original calm blue glow. The relief Sarah felt was overwhelming, but they weren't finished. The sequence had calmed the defensive system, proving their approach was correct. Now they needed to find the exact combination that would unlock the vault. The sequence they played was close but not perfect. They needed to refine it, make adjustments based on what they had learned. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah and her team made hundreds of small modifications to the sequence. Each time they played it, the sphere responded differently, giving them feedback about whether they were getting closer or farther from the solution. It was like having a conversation with an alien intelligence, learning its language one note at a time. The work became all-consuming. Sarah stopped keeping regular hours, sleeping in short bursts between testing sessions. She dreamed about the symbols and heard the harmonic sequences in her head even when awake. Her colleagues showed similar signs of obsession, driven by the knowledge that they were so close to a historic breakthrough. During this intense period, Sarah received news from home that made everything more complicated. Her sister called to say their mother was ill and asking for Sarah. The guilt of being so far away hit hard. She wanted to be there for her family, but she also couldn't abandon the project at such a critical moment. After a tearful phone call with her mother, who insisted Sarah stay and finish her important work, she made the difficult choice to remain at the site. This personal crisis gave Sarah a new perspective on the vault. Whoever built it had been far from their home too, leaving behind something incredibly important. They wanted someone to find it and understand it, but only if that someone showed dedication, intelligence, and patience. The vault wasn't just a puzzle, it was a test. With renewed determination, Sarah approached the problem differently. Instead of trying every possible combination, she started thinking about intention. What would make sense as a locking mechanism? What universal principles might alien builders use that any intelligent species could eventually figure out? The answer came during a quiet moment when Sarah sat alone in the vault, listening to its natural sounds. The rhythm of the sphere's pulse wasn't just random or decorative. It was a message, a pattern that repeated the same information over and over, waiting for someone to recognize it. The pulse was the key itself, telling them exactly which sequence to play. Sarah rushed to explain her realization to the team. They analyzed the sphere's pulse with new equipment, breaking down every aspect of its rhythm into measurable data. What they discovered was beautiful in its simplicity. The pulse contained a mathematical sequence encoded in the timing between each flash of light. That sequence corresponded directly to specific symbols on the wall. They spent 3 days translating the pulse into symbols, and then into acoustic frequencies. The resulting sequence was longer and more complex than anything they had tried before, but it felt right. David programmed it into their system, and they prepared for what everyone hoped would be the final test. The entire research team gathered outside the vault, watching through monitors as Sarah, Dr. Tanaka, Professor Hassan, and David entered the chamber one more time. Media representatives from around the world stood in a separate area, ready to broadcast whatever happened next. The pressure was immense, but Sarah felt strangely calm. They started the sequence. The vault filled with harmonies that built upon each other, creating layers of sound that seemed to resonate with the structure itself. The sphere's blue pulse synchronized with the music, speeding up and slowing down in perfect harmony. The symbols on the walls began to glow, lighting up in patterns that matched the sequence being played. As the final note sounded, something remarkable happened. The sphere rose from its pedestal, floating in the air as its gravitational field released. The walls of the vault began to shift, panels sliding aside to reveal additional chambers beyond. But most incredible of all, holographic projections appeared throughout the room, showing images and symbols that told a story. Sarah watched in awe as the holograms depicted an ancient civilization that had traveled between stars long before humans existed. They showed worlds being born and dying, technologies that seemed like magic, and beings who looked nothing like humans but shared the same curiosity and drive to explore. The projections explained that this vault was one of many scattered across different planets, left behind as gifts for younger species who might one day reach the stars themselves. The chamber beyond the vault contained knowledge encoded in crystalline matrices, information about physics, biology, engineering, and countless other fields. It was a library created by beings who understood they might not survive long enough to meet other intelligent species, so they left behind their collective wisdom, hoping someone would eventually find it. But there was a catch. The projections made clear that this knowledge came with responsibility. Any species capable of unlocking the vault had proven they possessed intelligence, cooperation, and patience. Now they had to prove they could use the knowledge wisely, for the benefit of all rather than the advantage of a few. The holograms faded, leaving the research team standing in silence, overwhelmed by what they had witnessed. The floating sphere slowly descended back to its pedestal, and the wall panels remained open, inviting them to explore further. Sarah felt tears on her cheeks, overcome by the magnitude of what they had accomplished. Dr. Webb's voice crackled through their communication devices, congratulating them and ordering an immediate security lockdown of the area. What happened next would require careful planning and international cooperation. The knowledge in the vault couldn't be rushed or controlled by any single nation. It belonged to all humanity. As Sarah climbed back to the surface that evening, exhausted but exhilarated, she thought about her mother and sister waiting for her back home. She would visit them soon and tell them everything. Though she doubted words could truly capture the experience, she had been part of something that would be remembered for thousands of years, a moment when humanity took its first real step toward joining a larger cosmic community. The weeks following the vault's opening brought chaos that nobody had anticipated. News of the discovery spread across the planet within hours, and the public reaction ranged from excitement to fear to religious fervor. Some people celebrated the confirmation that humanity wasn't alone in the universe. Others worried about what alien knowledge might do to human society. Religious leaders debated what this meant for their various faiths, while conspiracy theorists claimed governments had known about aliens all along. Sarah found herself thrust into the spotlight alongside her colleagues. They gave interviews to news organizations, explained their discoveries at press conferences, and tried to calm public fears about the implications. The attention was exhausting and often frustrating because reporters wanted simple answers to incredibly complex questions. How do you explain in a 30-second soundbite that humanity just received an encyclopedia from an ancient alien civilization? Behind the scenes, the real work began. International organizations formed committees to decide how the vault's knowledge should be shared and used. Every nation wanted access, but many feared their rivals would gain military or economic advantages. The United Nations hosted emergency sessions where representatives argued about ownership, access rights, and protocols for studying the alien archives. Sarah participated in some of these meetings and quickly grew disillusioned with the political maneuvering. The vault's creators had left their knowledge as a gift, hoping it would be used wisely. Instead, humans were fighting over it like children squabbling over toys. She expressed her frustration to Dr. Webb one evening, and he shared her concerns but reminded her that this was how humanity had always dealt with major discoveries. Progress came slowly, messily, and often painfully. Meanwhile, researchers began carefully exploring the chambers beyond the initial vault. The crystalline matrices contained information that would take decades to fully decode and understand. Initial scans revealed data about energy generation methods that could eliminate fossil fuel dependence, medical technologies that might cure previously untreatable diseases, and mathematical principles that could revolutionize computing and space travel. But accessing this information wasn't simple. The matrices required specific interaction methods, and mistakes could damage or erase the data they contained. Teams of specialists worked around the clock to develop safe ways to extract and translate the information. Every breakthrough opened new possibilities, but also raised new questions and challenges. Sarah's role shifted during this period. Her success in unlocking the vault made her one of the project's leaders, and she found herself coordinating between different research teams, managing resources and dealing with administrative tasks she never enjoyed. She missed the hands-on work of solving puzzles and making discoveries, but she understood her position gave her influence to ensure the vault's knowledge was handled properly. 3 months after the opening, something unexpected happened that changed everything. A young engineer named Marcus Rivera, working in one of the deeper chambers, discovered what appeared to be another sealed section. The initial scans hadn't detected it because it was hidden behind walls that mimicked the surrounding rock. Marcus reported the finding to his supervisors, and soon Sarah was leading a team to investigate. The hidden chamber was smaller than the main vault, but felt more important somehow. The entrance was sealed with a different locking mechanism, one that didn't rely on acoustic sequences. Instead, it seemed to require some form of biological input. Sensors around the doorway responded to presence and movement, but wouldn't activate the opening mechanism. Sarah spent days studying the entrance, trying to understand what the alien builders wanted. The design suggested they were waiting for something specific, some quality or characteristic that would prove worthiness to enter. The sensors measured various biological factors including brain activity, hormone levels, and even subtle electromagnetic fields generated by living bodies. During one examination, Sarah stood very still in front of the door, simply thinking about why she was there. She thought about the journey that brought her to this moment, the challenges her team had overcome, and the responsibility that came with accessing alien knowledge. As she stood in quiet contemplation, something shifted in her perception. She realized the door wasn't looking for a specific type of person or any particular characteristic. It was looking for intention, for understanding, for the kind of consciousness that recognized the weight of what lay beyond. The alien builders had created a lock that couldn't be picked or bypassed because it required something no tool could provide: genuine awareness and humility. Without really thinking about what she was doing, Sarah reached out and placed her palm flat against the smooth surface of the door. She wasn't trying to open it or activate anything. She was simply acknowledging it, recognizing the intelligence that had created it, and offering respect to beings who had died long before humans even existed. The door responded immediately. Symbols appeared where her hand touched, glowing with soft golden light. They spread across the surface in patterns that felt almost like a greeting or welcome. The door began to open, not by sliding or moving mechanically, but by somehow ceasing to be solid. The material became translucent, then transparent, then wasn't there at all. Sarah stepped through into a chamber unlike any they had found before. This wasn't a storage vault or library. It was something more personal, more intimate. The room was circular, with a high-domed ceiling that showed projections of stars and galaxies. In the center stood a pedestal similar to the one in the main vault, but instead of a sphere, it held what looked like a simple crystal about the size of a human fist. She approached slowly, feeling the weight of the moment. Other team members tried to follow her through the door, but it wouldn't let them pass. The opening appeared solid to everyone except Sarah. Dr. Tanaka called through the communication system, asking if she was okay and what she was seeing. Sarah described the chamber but couldn't explain why only she could enter. The crystal on the pedestal began to glow as she got closer, responding to her presence. Unlike the sphere in the main vault, this crystal didn't pulse with light. Instead, it seemed to contain light, holding entire galaxies within its structure. Sarah had the distinct impression it was waiting for her to reach out and touch it. She hesitated, aware that this moment might be the most important decision of her life. The crystal obviously contained something significant, something the alien builders wanted to share with whoever was worthy enough to reach this chamber. But what if she wasn't ready? What if humanity wasn't ready? The knowledge in the main vault was already causing conflicts and concerns. What might this crystal contain that required an even more secure hiding place? Sarah thought about her mother, still recovering from her illness back home. She thought about the daughter Dr. Tanaka talked about constantly, and Professor Hassan's grandchildren, and David's dreams of composing a symphony. She thought about every human being on Earth, billions of people with their own hopes and fears and dreams. Whatever she did in this moment wouldn't just affect her. It would impact everyone. The alien builders must have known this. must have designed this final test knowing it required someone to carry that weight and make that choice anyway. They were asking a tremendous thing, but they were also offering a tremendous gift. Sarah reached out and placed both hands on the crystal. The moment she made contact, everything changed. Information flooded into her mind, not as words or images, but as pure understanding. She learned the true purpose of the vaults, scattered across hundreds of worlds throughout the galaxy. She understood the civilization that created them, their rise and eventual fall, and the legacy they chose to leave behind. More importantly, she learned why this chamber was hidden and protected. The crystal contained something more valuable than technology or knowledge. It held the accumulated wisdom of thousands of civilizations that had come before, species that had faced the same challenges humans now confronted. It showed the paths to survival and flourishing, but also the paths to destruction and extinction. The crystal was offering humanity a choice, but it was also offering guidance. Every civilization reached a moment when their technology outpaced their wisdom, when they had the power to reshape worlds but hadn't yet learned the responsibility that came with that power. The vault's knowledge could elevate humanity to undreamed heights or accelerate their own destruction. The crystal would help them choose wisely, but only if Sarah agreed to serve as a bridge between the ancient wisdom and her own people. She understood instantly that accepting this role would change her life completely. She would become more than a scientist or researcher. She would become a guardian of knowledge, a guide for humanity as they learned to use what the vaults contained. It was a burden she never asked for and a responsibility that terrified her. But as Sarah stood there with her hands on the crystal, feeling the weight of countless civilizations watching through time, she knew there was only one answer she could give. Sarah accepted the crystal's offer without speaking a word. The agreement happened deeper than language. A connection formed between her consciousness and something vast and ancient. The moment she made the choice, the crystal dissolved into particles of light that flowed into her, becoming part of her in ways she couldn't fully comprehend. She felt different, but also somehow more herself than she had ever been before. When she stepped back through the doorway, her colleagues immediately noticed something had changed. Her eyes held depths they hadn't seen before, and she carried herself with a new gravity. Dr. Tanaka asked repeatedly what happened in the chamber, but Sarah struggled to explain. How could she describe experiencing the rise and fall of entire civilizations in the span of minutes? How could she convey the weight of wisdom accumulated over millions of years? Dr. Webb called an emergency meeting with the senior researchers. Sarah sat at the table surrounded by people who had become her friends and explained as best she could what the crystal had shown her. She told them about the true purpose of the vaults and the choice facing humanity. The knowledge they had found could transform human civilization, but only if they approached it with wisdom, patience, and genuine concern for the well-being of all people. The reaction was mixed. Some researchers were excited, seeing the crystal's wisdom as exactly what humanity needed to avoid destroying itself. Others were skeptical, uncomfortable with the idea that Sarah had somehow become a conduit for alien knowledge. A few were openly hostile, arguing that this development concentrated too much power and influence in one person. Dr. Raymond Foster, who had opposed the acoustic approach from the beginning, was particularly vocal in his objections. Sarah understood their concerns. She wouldn't have trusted someone making similar claims just weeks earlier. But the crystal's integration with her consciousness wasn't about power or control. It was about access to perspective, an understanding that could help interpret the vault's contents in context. She didn't know everything now, but she knew how to ask better questions and recognize patterns that might otherwise be missed. The international committees overseeing the vault project demanded Sarah submit to extensive testing. Doctors examined her physically while psychologists assessed her mental state. Neurologists used advanced imaging to study her brain activity and found unusual patterns they couldn't explain. Nothing about her seemed dangerous or concerning, but she was definitely changed in measurable ways. During one examination, a neuroscientist named Dr. Patricia Torres noticed something remarkable. Sarah's brain showed activity in regions typically dormant in humans, areas associated with advanced pattern recognition and spatial reasoning. Dr. Torres theorized that the crystal had somehow activated latent capabilities present in all humans, but rarely used. Sarah wasn't becoming less human. She was becoming more of what humans could potentially be. This discovery shifted the conversation significantly. If the crystal had enhanced Sarah's natural abilities rather than fundamentally altering her, then its wisdom might be accessible to others as well. Perhaps the alien builders hadn't chosen Sarah specifically, but had created a system that would work with any human who proved ready for the responsibility. The implications were staggering and gave hope that the vault's knowledge could eventually benefit everyone. Meanwhile, Sarah began her work as a bridge between the ancient wisdom and modern research. When teams encountered particularly difficult sections of the crystalline archives, she could often provide insights that unlocked their meaning. She didn't translate directly, but rather helped researchers ask the right questions and consider perspectives they might otherwise miss. Her role was subtle but invaluable. One breakthrough came when Sarah worked with the medical research team examining alien biological data. They had found information about cellular regeneration techniques, but couldn't understand how the principles translated to human physiology. Sarah, accessing the wisdom within her, recognized that the aliens used a fundamentally different approach to medicine, treating organisms as integrated systems rather than collections of separate parts. With her guidance, the medical team developed new protocols that showed remarkable promise in preliminary testing. Injuries that normally took weeks to heal were recovering in days. Diseases that resisted conventional treatment responded to approaches inspired by the alien data. The work was still in early stages and would require years of careful research before clinical applications, but the potential was undeniable. Similar progress occurred across multiple fields. Engineers working on energy systems gained insights that helped them develop clean power sources, far more efficient than existing technology. Physicists studying the vault's information about space-time manipulation made theoretical breakthroughs that could eventually enable faster-than-light travel. Agricultural scientists learned techniques for growing food in environments previously considered impossible. But not everyone was happy with these developments. As Sarah's influence grew and the vault's knowledge began transforming various fields, resistance emerged from unexpected sources. Industries threatened by clean energy fought against new technologies that would make their products obsolete. Military organizations in several countries wanted access to knowledge that could be weaponized, and they were frustrated by Sarah's insistence that certain information remain restricted. Political tensions increased as nations competed to benefit first from the vault's discoveries. Some countries accused others of gaining unfair advantages through preferential access to research teams. Trade disputes arose over how to handle the economic disruption caused by new technologies. Sarah found herself pulled into negotiations and conflicts she never wanted to be part of. The situation came to a crisis point when a group of extremists, believing the alien knowledge threatened their way of life, attempted to destroy one of the research facilities. Security stopped them before they caused significant damage, but the incident highlighted growing opposition to the Vault project. Sarah received death threats from people who saw her as a traitor to humanity for accepting alien influence, while others worshipped her as a prophet or savior. Through all this chaos, Sarah remained focused on her core mission. She continued working with research teams, providing guidance and insight while trying to keep the bigger picture in view. The crystal's wisdom had shown her that every civilization faced similar challenges during their transition to becoming a spacefaring species. The path was never smooth, and there were always those who resisted change out of fear or self-interest. 6 months after entering the hidden chamber, Sarah made a decision that surprised everyone. She announced she was taking a leave of absence from the Vault project to visit her family. Many people questioned the timing, arguing that her guidance was needed now more than ever. But Sarah insisted that staying connected to her humanity was more important than any research breakthrough. She returned home to find her mother much improved and eager to hear about everything Sarah had experienced. Sitting in her childhood kitchen, drinking tea and eating homemade cookies, Sarah tried to explain the incredible journey she had been on. Her mother listened quietly, asking occasional questions, and when Sarah finished, she said something profound. Her mother reminded her that wisdom wasn't just about knowing things. It was about understanding people, about recognizing that everyone carried their own struggles and fears. The alien builders had left their knowledge behind, hoping it would help, but help only worked when people felt understood and respected. Sarah needed to remember that before she could guide humanity forward. Those words stayed with Sarah as she returned to the Vault. She began approaching her role differently, spending less time in laboratories and more time talking with people affected by the changes happening around them. She met with workers whose jobs were disappearing because of new technologies and helped develop transition programs. She spoke with religious leaders concerned about the spiritual implications of alien contact and found common ground in shared values of compassion and growth. Sarah also started training others to access the crystal's wisdom. She discovered that through meditation and focused intention, she could help other people activate the same dormant capabilities the crystal had awakened in her. It was a slow process, and not everyone could achieve the same level of connection. But gradually a small group of guides emerged who could help interpret the vault's knowledge. This distributed approach eased many concerns about too much power being concentrated in one person. It also proved the alien builders had been wise in their design. They hadn't created a system that elevated one individual above others. They had created a system that could help an entire species evolve together, each person contributing their unique perspective and abilities. As the first year drew to a close, Sarah reflected on how much had changed. The world wasn't perfect, far from it. Conflicts continued, people still struggled, and many challenges remained. But humanity was moving forward, slowly learning to use the gift they had been given with wisdom and care. The vault had opened doors to possibilities beyond imagination, but it was human hands that had to walk through them, and human hearts that would decide where those paths led. Standing once again in the main vault chamber, watching the blue sphere pulse with its steady rhythm, Sarah felt grateful. Grateful for the alien builders who had faith that younger species could grow wise. Grateful for her colleagues who worked tirelessly to unlock secrets and solve problems. Grateful for the opportunity to be part of something larger than herself. Most of all, she was grateful that she had simply reached out and touched that door, trusting that sometimes the most important gesture was the willingness to try. 2 years had passed since the vault first opened, and the world had transformed in ways both subtle and dramatic. The clean energy technologies derived from alien knowledge were now powering entire cities, reducing carbon emissions dramatically. Medical treatments inspired by the vault's biological data were saving lives that would have been lost just years earlier. Agricultural innovations were feeding populations in regions that had suffered chronic food shortages. Sarah watched these changes with satisfaction, but also with awareness of the work still ahead. The crystal's wisdom had taught her that transformation took time, and rushing progress often created as many problems as it solved. She traveled constantly now, visiting research facilities, speaking at conferences and meeting with leaders from various fields to ensure the vault's knowledge was being applied thoughtfully. The group of guides she had trained grew to include 50 individuals from 30 different countries. Each brought their own cultural perspective and expertise, enriching the collective understanding of the alien archives. They met regularly to share insights and coordinate efforts, forming a network that transcended national boundaries and political divisions. But challenges continued to emerge. Some corporations tried to monopolize certain technologies for profit, while governments attempted to classify information for military advantage. Sarah and the other guides worked constantly to keep knowledge accessible, while preventing its misuse. It was exhausting work that required diplomatic skill and moral courage. During this time, researchers made another significant discovery. Deep within the unexplored sections of the vault complex, they found a chamber containing what appeared to be a communication device. The technology was unlike anything in the main archives, suggesting it served a different purpose. Initial analysis revealed it was designed to send signals across vast distances of space. Sarah was called to examine the device alongside Dr. Tanaka, who had become one of the senior researchers, and a physicist named Dr. Robert Chen. Together they studied the alien technology, trying to understand its function and purpose. The device was clearly meant to be activated, but the question was when and by whom. After weeks of careful examination, Sarah experienced a moment of clarity. The crystal's wisdom revealed that this wasn't just a communication device but a beacon. The alien builders had scattered their vaults across many worlds, and each vault contained a beacon that could be activated once the local species proved ready. Activation would send a signal announcing that another civilization had reached a certain level of development and consciousness. The implications were staggering. Activating the beacon meant declaring to the galaxy that humanity was ready to join a larger community of intelligent species. But were they ready? Sarah wasn't sure. Humans had made remarkable progress in understanding and applying the vault's knowledge, but they still struggled with conflicts, inequality, and environmental damage. They had the technology to reach the stars, but not yet the wisdom to guarantee they would be good neighbors. Sarah called for a global consultation, something unprecedented in scale. Using the communication networks that connected the guide network, she reached out to people from every nation and culture. The question was simple but profound. Should humanity activate the beacon and announce their presence to whatever civilizations might be listening, or should they wait until they achieved greater unity and maturity? The discussion that followed lasted 6 months and engaged billions of people. Town halls were held in every major city. Online forums buzzed with debate. Religious leaders offered their perspectives while philosophers contemplated the ethical dimensions. Scientists weighed the potential benefits and risks. Artists imagined what contact with alien civilizations might mean for human culture. Sarah listened to every voice she could, from the most educated experts to ordinary people sharing their hopes and fears. What struck her most was the diversity of opinion and the passion people brought to the question. Some argued humanity should reach out immediately, that contact with other civilizations would accelerate progress and understanding. Others insisted humans needed to solve their own problems before inviting galactic attention. Throughout the consultation process, Sarah worked with the other guides to help people access deeper levels of understanding. They led meditation sessions that helped individuals connect with the same wisdom she carried, allowing them to sense for themselves the weight and significance of the decision. Slowly, a consensus began to emerge, not through majority vote but through collective understanding. Humanity decided they were not quite ready to activate the beacon, but they committed to specific goals that would indicate readiness. They would activate it when clean energy replaced fossil fuels globally, when no child anywhere went hungry, when international conflicts were resolved through dialogue rather than violence, and when at least 1% of the global population had achieved the level of consciousness awakening that Sarah and the other guides possessed. These were ambitious targets that would take decades to achieve, but they gave humanity a clear purpose and direction. The vault's knowledge provided the tools to reach these goals, but human will and determination would be required to actually get there. Sarah felt this was the right choice, honoring both the gift they had received and their responsibility to use it well. As the consultation concluded, something unexpected happened. The beacon activated on its own briefly, sending a pulse that lasted only seconds. Analysis of the pulse revealed it wasn't a full activation, but rather an acknowledgement. The alien builders, or whatever system they had left behind, recognized that humanity had reached a crucial moment. They had chosen to be thoughtful rather than hasty, to value wisdom over ambition. The brief pulse apparently sent information as well as received it. Data flooded into the vault's systems, new archives that hadn't been accessible before. The material included knowledge specifically relevant to the challenges humanity had identified as their goals. It was as if the aliens had anticipated this moment and prepared assistance for species who showed the wisdom to recognize their own limitations. Sarah spent months exploring the new archives with her fellow guides and researchers. They found detailed information about sustainable societies, conflict resolution techniques that had worked across multiple civilizations, and methods for helping populations evolve consciousness more rapidly. The alien builders hadn't just left a library behind. They had created a responsive educational system that adapted to the needs of whoever discovered it. Over the following years, Sarah watched as humanity slowly but steadily progressed toward the goals they had set. It wasn't easy or smooth. There were setbacks and failures, moments when progress seemed impossible and conflicts threatened to undo everything achieved. But each time challenges arose, people remembered why they were striving forward and found the strength to continue. Sarah herself changed during this time. The intensity of her connection to the crystal's wisdom gradually decreased as its knowledge became more integrated into her natural understanding. She was less a conduit for alien insight and more a person who had been profoundly educated by an extraordinary experience. Other guides reported similar transformations, suggesting the alien system was designed to enhance rather than replace human capability. 10 years after the vault opened, Sarah stood once again in the chamber where she had first touched the crystal. The room looked the same, but she saw it with different eyes now. She understood that the alien builders hadn't been trying to save humanity or direct their evolution. They had simply offered a gift and trusted that humans would figure out what to do with it. That trust had been warranted. Humanity wasn't perfect, would never be perfect, but they were learning and growing. The vault had accelerated their development. But the real transformation came from within, from billions of individuals choosing every day to be better, to help others, to think beyond their immediate concerns toward a larger future. Sarah thought about the day she had placed her palm against the door, that simple gesture that changed everything. She hadn't known what would happen, had no guarantee of success or safety. She had simply acted with intention and openness, willing to meet whatever lay beyond with curiosity rather than fear. That gesture, she realized, was what the alien builders had been waiting for all along. Not a specific action or magic word, but an approach to the unknown that combined courage with humility. They had left their vaults for species who could reach out despite uncertainty, who could accept wisdom without demanding control, who could recognize a gift without grasping to own it. As Sarah left the vault that day, walking back toward the surface and the waiting world above, she smiled. The beacon would activate eventually, when humanity achieved the goals they had set for themselves. When that day came, they would join a community of civilizations that had all walked similar paths, each learning in their own way to balance knowledge with wisdom, capability with responsibility, and ambition with care. The alien vault had been opened with sound and science, but it had been truly unlocked with something much simpler, a gesture of respect and recognition, a willingness to meet the unknown with open hands and an open heart. That was the real key, and it had been within humanity all along, waiting for someone to simply reach out and use it.